Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth on YouTube. And as you've noticed in some of my previous videos, and being originally from Chicago, I have displayed and mentioned several times about Chicago becoming a sanctuary city, and that the city, state, and federal government have a plan for these migrants that have entered Chicago. And as you also are all aware of, that they are bringing these individuals from Mexico, Venezuela, very high climates, transporting them to Chicago, which is getting ready to become very, very cold. So there's a climate issue for these human beings. It's amazing how the U.S. government is not keeping them in warmer climates like Texas and Florida and California, even though there are a lot of people that have been displaced in Texas. Florida started sending them away. Texas started sending them away, but there are many there in Arizona and California. But they are now placing these migrants, these individuals, children, women, non-English speaking, haven't been vetted for background checks or healthcare checks, COVID vaccinations, any of that nature. But they're placing them in New York, Denver, and Chicago, which will be very cold here shortly. And they're making tent cities. But the disruption and the controversy is that Chicago has not had a plan, and they have gone from a sanctuary city to a concentration camp. And now many of these immigrants are truly upset. They tried to assault an older woman in Chicago. They have them living at police stations, outside tents. They are building a tent city on an old Jewel grocery store parking lot. And Chicago is called the Windy City for a reason. And it has gone from a sanctuary city to a concentration camp. This is what the people are saying. So this can end up a scenario where they could end up worse here than where they came from. How are they going to get a job? How are they going to get food? How are they going to get health care? How is this going to affect our social services? Medicaid, food stamps, housing vouchers will all put a strain on our economic system, and the taxpayers of Chicago will have to pay for it. And therefore, we're displacing all of these migrants in poor, dilapidated communities that are already struggling with all kinds of social, cultural, economic issues. So we're putting one problem on top of another, and there is going to be a boiling point and eventually a volcanic eruption that is going to take place in Chicago. And I think Mayor Brandon Johnson has done a very poor job. I think he is taking on a battle that he was not prepared for. And then you also have to think about, with this large influx of illegal immigrants in these poor, dilapidated cities, there was a time during Black Lives Matter where everybody in every major city wanted to defund the police. So we have this high influx of uneducated, ill-informed, poor migrants in these poor urban cities. Crime is definitely going to go up. And with many of these people being of Hispanic or Mexican or Venezuelan descent, there's going to be an uptake in the Latin Kings and Mexican gangs, gun violence. Once these individuals realize that America has not prepared itself to take care of these people, when your belly is hungry and your heart is broken, the one thing that human beings have acclimated themselves to is how to survive. And many times it's through criminal activity. If corporate America, if small businesses are not hiring these individuals, which you see a huge preponderance in the black community that are not being hired, you're going to have one angry group of people on top of another angry group of people. And in Chicago, it's down like 500 to 1,000 police officers. So defunding the police does not make sense while we're inundating the city of Chicago with more and more people who need help, who are hurting, who are desperate, who are poor. The federal government, the city, and the state government dropped the ball on this one. They did not have a plan, and if the general public thinks that mentioning this migrant issue, where we're going to have over 1 million legal immigrants entering this country in no time soon, if this ends up decimating the city even more, how was it helpful? We're always in a rush to stick our hand out and pretend like we're helping, when sometimes we're being more hurtful than helpful. So defunding the police is not the answer while we're influxing more and more people of color. As we know, historically in America, people of color have always been at the bottom socio-economically, educationally, from a small business standpoint. But there's an uptick in uneducatedness, incarceration, violent crimes that have been associated with people of color. So to go from a sanctuary city to an entrapment or an encampment that is not healthy spiritually, physically, emotionally for these migrants, and also for the citizens that live in these urban cities where these people are being displaced, it is backfiring. So how does America manifest its truth? Well, first of all, we have to look in the mirror and understand immediately that we've made a mistake. And we have to figure out a way to sustain and help these migrants immediately. But we've been doing a poor job for the migrants. I'm an immigrant. I'm not originally from here. So for people to think that I'm anti-immigrant, no, the first people were here historically were Native Americans. So I'm not anti-immigrant. That would be hypocritical for me to say. But I think that we need to make sure that we develop a skill set, our social services are intact to help these individuals. But if you talk to people of color that have been here for 100 years, the social services model and platform has been a joke from day one. It has not been a helpful resource. These non-for-profit organizations, 90% of the money that's donated is used for salaries and ancillary services for the business, not for the mission of helping people that need the help. So we have to stop being so hypocritical and having these false ideologies about America is the land of the free. We're here to help everybody. This situation in Chicago is turning into a disaster. Now we have these liberal laws. Not only did we want to defund the police, but now we have this Safety Act law where they're not being proactive in arresting or holding individuals that commit minor crimes. Well, how do you define a minor crime? Because in Troy, Illinois, there was a young man here recently, 52 years old, that shot his girlfriend 7 times, 2 times in the back in Troy, Illinois, and he was able to get out under his own recognizance. The judge said he wasn't a threat to people and wasn't a threat to leave. So now he can show up to court on his own. That's going to be another deleterious effect on our social cultural norms in the state of Illinois. This SAFETY Act is a liberal law, and many of these individuals in Cook County could commit car thefts, home invasions, strong arm robberies, and may get arrested and then get out with no bail, no bond, on their own, and then are allowed to come to court by their word of their mouth. And as we know, most people who commit crimes are not the most honest individuals, and who thinks, this is the craziest thinking in the world, who thinks that somebody who's out here committing harmful crimes against people are going to show up to court to hear whether they're getting sentenced or not. Nobody's going to volunteer to go to jail. So Chicago going from a sanctuary city to a concentration camp. This is also taking place in New York. California is inundated. They have a no cash bail system with all the homelessness, joblessness, opioid crisis, mental health issues that are taking place, gun violence, gang violence. So we have these loose criminal laws. We have the defunding of the police. Most of our major cities throughout the country, St. Louis, Missouri is down several hundred police officers. We're policing ourselves. This is going to be a purging of society. We are completely headed in the wrong direction. We have our interest in Ukraine. We have this interest in the Gaza Strip. And there are a lot of things that are taking place inside this country that we are just blinking an eye at. And Chicago turning into a concentration camp for these migrants is horrible. The cold weather that's about to take place is horrible. Displacing these people in poor, dilapidated communities is horrible. I'm not anti-migrant, but if we're going to bring them in, let's bring them in to help them, not to make their circumstance worse. Kids are being lost, being removed from their parents. So you have child trafficking, drug trafficking that could have an uptick. There are several immoral and unethical things that could have the potential to take place that could turn a brewing brush fire into a tremendous forest fire. So for those who have been listening and watching my YouTube channel, please stay aware and cognizant of what's going on in Chicago, New York, California, San Francisco. And if you live in other cities, this could happen right in your backyard. There's a sanctuary city in Atlanta. There's over 30,000 people in Denver. And this could take a swiping epidemic of harmful, deleterious, tremendously bad circumstances that could infect our entire community, society, and culture. This is going to turn into a major public safety issue. So please stay aware, please stay conscious, please stay woke. If you like this commentary, please hit the like and the subscribe button, and please share this information with people you think will find it informative. I also have a Trevor Donald Experience podcast that's on Spotify, Buzzsprout, Amazon Music. Hit the like and the notification if you decide to listen just to an audio voice podcast. I talk about these very similar issues, same issues, and we have to keep a close eye on Chicago and making sure we do the right thing with these migrants.